Something wicked this way comes, with a higher power-to-weight ratio than Husqvarna's Norden 901. Something wicked this way comes, with more fuel capacity than KTM's Adventure R. Something wicked this way comes, with more ground clearance than Aprilia's Touareg 660. Something wicked this way comes, with its modern yet brawny retro rally racer good looks. Yes indeed, something wicked this way comes. Now, Ducati have added their distinctive mark to the already packed mid-sized ADV touring motorcycle segment with their new Desmo engine 937cc Desert X. It's hard to believe nearly a litre in displacement is considered a mid-sized bike, but on spec you'd have to say it was closer to the Tiger 900, KTM Adventure, Norden 901 and Touareg 660 ADV bikes than the big plus-litre bikes like the 1200 Tigers. And looks are somewhere to start. For some, the Dakar-inspired looks are off-putting, but ever since a friend of mine had a KTM 640 Adventure, I've always enjoyed the look of a rally bike. For me, like Husqvarna with their Norden 901, Ducati have done that rare thing, managing to transition from prototype to production spec without losing the essence of the original form and the concept. For me, they smashed it. If you want to see an example of a manufacturer maintaining concept but losing form, then look no farther than Honda's slightly stodgy but very good new entry, the NT1100 touring bike. It's a great bike, but it's lost the essence of the original concept, the CB1100 prototype, which, for me at least, was a knockout. Ducati have managed to add their usual artistic flair to the rally racer genre with the muscular tank and the integrated fairing by somehow managing to make it look authentic without it resembling a banana boat from the side. Speaking of the Norden, rather than a single headlight, the Desert X gets a traditional retro Dakar-esque treatment with twin headlights encased in attractive modern LED coronas which act as daytime running lights. It also gets a tasty, narrow, angular sculpted saddle, which completes a slim rear end. It looks both authentic and yet modern. From the front it looks poised and agile, yet from the rear three-quarters it looks aggressive and all business. I love it. Ducati dispensed with the big 1200cc Scrambler engine on the prototype and went with the lighter 937cc L or V2 Testa Stretta engine found in the Multistrada V2. Ducati claim that by reducing the weight of the wet slipper clutch and covers, they've lightened that unit by 1.7 kilograms. And the fact the Desert X doesn't have a noisy dry clutch will please the camels. Producing a class-leading 110 horsepower at 9250 RPM and 98 pounds-foot of torque at 6500 RPM, the power curve looks quite predictable, while the torque curve is fairly uniform, building significantly by 3000 RPM. How well this engine will chug while pulling the fully laden bike slowly through technical trails or mud is a question, and will be interesting to see, which segues nicely into the gearbox, which has been changed from the Multi V2 for just that reason. First to fifth gears have been shortened to enable better off-road tractability while leaving sixth gear alone, as an overdrive if you like, for the highway. A great idea. With its 2-year warranty, what's particularly impressive about the Desert X is that Ducati have stretched the oil change maintenance service intervals to 15,000 kilometers or 9,000 miles, which isn't bad. Mind you, if I owned this bike and rode it off-road in dry, dusty conditions, then the oil would be dropped far more frequently if I intended to keep it for a significant length of time. The valve service will be expensive, but they again are stretched out to a money-saving 18,000 miles or 30,000 kilometers. And while that's not super impressive for some other manufacturers, it's quite impressive from Ducati. Ducati have gone with a light but strong steel trellis frame with a longer wheelbase, with more rake and trail than the Multistrada V2, giving it a touch more stability on the road. That's an interesting call, as when mated to its 21-inch front wheel, there will be a further reduction in agility. Perhaps that's a good thing when you're floating the front wheel across sand, but most riders will never hit sand with this bike, and I wonder why they didn't go the other way like Triumph with their 1200 Rally and instead reduced the rake and trail to offset the 21-inch wheel. But I'm sure Ducati have their reasons for that.
Molto stupito
One of the many standout features on the Desert X is the fact that Ducati surprisingly kept the rear tank which featured on the prototype. This is a great idea, although it doesn't look like the accessory tank can be used if you fit the accessory hard luggage. With a claimed fuel consumption of 5.6 litres per 100 kilometers, the 21-litre front tank gives you a range of 230 miles or 370 kilometers, while the added 8 litres from an optional rear tank takes it up to a class-leading 320 miles or 515 kilometers, with only the Tiger 1200 30-litre tank outgunning it. That all leads to weight. The Desert X dry weight of 202 kilograms, which is within a stone's throw of bikes like the slightly heavier Norden 901 or the lighter KTM Adventure and the Tiger 900, is about average for the class. There's not much in it, and of course it will come in heavier with both tanks brimful. In keeping with the other serious competitors in this middleweight segment, Ducati have given the Desert X an 18-inch rear wheel and a 21-inch front as mentioned before. These are a must when you're talking more technical off-road riding, as is the three-way Kayaba fully adjustable suspension on both ends with 230mm of travel on the 47mm upside-down front forks and 220mm of travel on the rear. While there's no option for a semi-active suspension on the bike like on the Tiger 900 Rally GT Pro, I think that's a wise choice, as Ducati has to keep the weight down on the Desert X to stay competitive in this segment. More on that later. The brakes are very good, with the fronts being radially mounted 4-pot M50s, biting into twin 320mm front discs. The rears are Brembos too. While the brakes are very good road spec brakes, they are perhaps overkill for the off-road diet the bike will potentially encounter. And if I have a gripe here, weight could have been saved by taking a leaf out of Aprilia's book and fitting lighter and cheaper non-radially mounted Brembo fronts. In keeping with its futuristic aesthetic, the Desert X is laden with tech. While, as mentioned before, it lacks the semi-automatic suspension of larger ADV bikes, I don't see that as a negative. If Ducati intends this bike to travel 30,000 kilometers between valve checks, much of it off-road, then keeping the mechanicals as simple as possible while keeping the weight down would be my preference as well. The bike comes with a vertical 5-inch color TFT from which all things can be controlled, including moving fuel from the rear tank to the front when the front tank is below a certain level. As is common now, the TFT comes with Bluetooth to hook up your phone for multimedia, calls and turn-by-turn nav. It has 2 display modes, a standard for road riding, which gives you all the typical data you need, and rally, where you get a trip meter style navigation style display as used in the Dakar. With 3 levels of engine braking control, 8 levels of traction control, 4 levels of wheelie control, 3 levels of switchable ABS, and a lean sensitive 6-axis IMU, the Desert X is well sorted for rider aids. It's equipped with 6 riding modes, 4 road modes, and 2 off-road modes that take into consideration the whole gamut of riding conditions you could find yourself in. Sport gives you the full 110 horsepower and maximum throttle response for your spirited road riding fix, while Touring reduces the power to 95 horsepower and smooths out the throttle, allowing some wheelie and traction intervention. Urban mode only gives you 75 horsepower but smooths out the throttle response, while strangely, Rain mode boosts you back up to 95 horsepower but with full traction, wheelie and ABS control, albeit with the same smooth throttle response. Of the 2 off-road modes, Enduro mode is the gentler mode with 75 horsepower on tap and the ability to disable ABS if you want, where the stronger rally mode gets the full 110 horsepower, no wheelie, and little in the way of intervention by the traction control and ABS, which you can disable, so it's for the experts or the optimists. Ergonomically, Ducati have worked hard to make the Desert X a bike you can ride for miles and stand comfortably on the pegs. The seat height is 875mm or about 34.5 inches, which is reasonable for this type of bike. The narrow seat allows riders' legs to tuck in nicely when standing. The front fairing and tank will likely push some of the air away from the rider, and in hotter climates the vent will work nicely to deflect hot air down away from the rider while bathing them in cooler air. Cool being a relative term if you're in the desert, of course. In northern climates, though, you may curse the designer for allowing the frigid air to ice up your groin while toasting your boots. Finally, crash bars, the rear tank, and hard luggage are also added cost options. In conclusion, The attractive and well-equipped Desert X brings some interesting ideas to an already crowded and ultra-competitive middleweight ADV segment, a segment filled with other very capable bikes. Despite being a Ducati, it's going to have to duke it out with some great bikes to be successful. It's certainly among the best looking of the rally bikes out there and arguably among the best looking of all time. But there's the elephant in the room, the Cagiva elephant, the bike which many believe inspired this one. The original elephant was a Ducati-engined 900cc rally bike from 1994 weighing exactly the same dry as the current Desert X does nearly 30 years later, and putting out nearly the same amount of power as well. Surely, tech, materials and design have progressed to a point where a premium manufacturer can undercut that weight significantly. While currently Ducati are famed for their V-twins and V4s, they have a history of parallel twin engines as well. Perhaps it's time they rediscover this engine in an effort to save more weight. Instead, they shoehorned their Testastretta V-twin into this bike, whereas most other manufacturers cut weight by using a vertical twin with one cylinder head and a 270-degree crank to emulate the characteristics of a V-twin. As such, other manufacturers have undercut the Desert X's weight. And once more, I take you back to the future with the KTM 640 Adventure, which weighed in at a staggering 158 kilograms or 348 pounds, a staggering 44 kilograms lighter than the Desert X. Furthermore, with that thought in mind, I wonder why Ducati chose to try to shoehorn this bike into this segment with a litre-sized engine. Yes, it was available, but with only two real bikes in the sub-700cc segment that you could call worthy competitors, the Aprilia and the Yamaha T7, I would have thought a premium 700 would have been a better bet, lighter as well. Finally, something else wicked this way comes. The price. At $19,300 Canadian, the Desert X is expensive compared to some of the better equipped competition. Like the Desert X, the Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro at $500 more comes with cruise control and a quick shifter, but it also includes heated seats, heated grips, TPMS, automatic rear preload and backlit switchgear. The KTM 890 Adventure R is $15,899 Canadian, nearly $3,500 cheaper. The Norden is cheaper still, and let's not mention the Aprilia Touareg 660 and finally the Yamaha T700, which are both significantly lighter and will allow you to buy all the kit, accessories and miles of consumables and get mega change from $20,000. Overall, when Ducati is stenciled on a tank, well, that's worth something. But for me, I'm not sure it's worth 5,000 Canadian over and above many of the other competitors in this segment, given that its specs are no more premium than some of the other bikes in the sector. For that coin, I would expect a significantly lighter and more capable bike than the competition, and I'm not sure yet whether that's the case with the Desert X. Still, overall, price is not everything, and the Desert X is a lovely looking bike for me. Undoubtedly, given the proven engine and its heritage, it will be a capable bike on the road. How it stacks up to the KTM Adventure R or the lighter Aprilia 660 is something I'm looking forward to finding out.
Once again, thanks for watching everyone. If this is the first time you've watched, please consider subscribing. I do product reviews, motorcycle reviews, off-road and on-road vlogs, as well as tours. Don't forget to follow me on social media, that's Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, and to like, and especially, I'm begging you here folks, subscribe. This is the BlueMarbleRider, out.